Hello and welcome to week 2's video for the August code challenge right here. And this, as you know, is due in September. And if you have not followed so far but would like to participate, there's 3 weeks to go. So don't worry, you can get started now. You can go to mashrurhossain.com and then go to blog. And the first one there, August 2017 code challenge. Okay. Now, what I want to talk about today is how to quickly set up an authentication system. All right, there are details of the application there. For the seller or for any people logging into the system, you need the authentication system up and running. And if you don't want to build the ones that we do in our courses from scratch, you can use Devise. And that's why I have this video up. This is a free video on YouTube. If you look for Ruby on Rails Devise Bootstrap by myself, or if you just search my name, you will find it. And it has 4,500 views, which is pretty decent, but I don't have a big YouTube presence. As you can see, the reason I have this up on the right here, there are a lot of other people with authentication systems with Devise. They have videos on. So if you don't like mine, or if you want more info, you can see how easy it is. There are so many videos on it, okay? And so yeah, take a look, but try this one first. This one is pretty detailed and it shows you how to set up styling and Devise very fast. Okay, so that's part one, and this is also part of a video series I have. So if you feel like one or two gems are missing, just look at the playlist. Okay, there's the full playlist and find this video there, part of a series of videos. So that'll help you set up the authentication system. The second thing is the many-to-many association, all right? Because we have products and then we have categories of products. So I think it's a good time to have a refresher on many-to-many associations. So I have, after this part, I will have 2 videos from the professional Ruby on Rails developer with Rails 5, which is very detailed. And first you have a little introduction to many-to-many associations and then implementation of a many-to-many association. All right, so that's going to be following this part of this video, and it'll be one after the other as part of this video. So you don't have to click on another video. All right, and that again will be available on YouTube as well. Yeah, so that's what I want to cover for this week. I hope you're having fun building the project. And if you haven't found team members, remember to go to the live help and find other members looking for team members, and also fill in the document right here. As you can see, there are 4 or 5 groups already who have team members. There are other team members looking for people, like this team right here, Magic Shop, is looking for people. Just add in your name. And next week I'm going to discuss setting up your website really fast for the bio, and that could be for your team or yourself. And that's definitely one of the more necessary steps of this project because it works towards increasing your online visibility. All right, well, good luck, and I'll see you next week. Hello and welcome to this section. I hope you're enjoying the course so far and enjoying the exercises as well. In this section, we're going to switch gears a little bit, okay? Now you've had exposure to 2 different resources that you've built fully, chefs and recipes. You've learned how to do the association with them, and you have also built complete test suites for both of those resources, okay? So in this section, we're going to do 2 things. We're going to skip building test suite. I'm going to expect you to do this yourself. This does not mean that you shouldn't do this, okay? It's just I feel you have enough information by building the first 2 that you'll be able to apply it to anything that you build going forward or be able to figure it out, okay? So this will be left as exercise for you. And the second thing is I'm going to explain less in terms of the basic CRUD, okay, for each resource. I'll build them much faster. We've gone through each and every action and we've gone through them in detail. In this one, I'm going to focus more and try to display what a regular development environment would look like and build things faster. Obviously, if we have something new, then I will explain it in detail. But otherwise, we'll just focus on building faster. Now, that does not mean taking shortcuts, okay? So, still no generators unless necessary. So basically, no shortcuts, but build faster. So let's get started. In the last section, I left you a reading exercise to read about many-to-many association. And in Rails, that follows the has many through, okay? Has many through implementation of it. And many-to-many association is a database term. It's independent of Rails. And just like one-to-many, it's a way that relationships between tables are implemented. And in Rails, it's done through has many through relationship between the models. So let me talk about how we're going to build this in our application. We're going to introduce ingredients to our application, all right? So let's talk very briefly about what ingredients are. And ingredients are something that will be present in all recipes, okay, right? Because you need ingredients to build things. And then each recipe may have more than one ingredient, right? So many ingredients in general, many ingredients. Let's say you have a spice in your kitchen. Let's say you have ground cloves, okay? Are you going to use all of that spice on one recipe? No. You will use it on multiple recipes, multiple dishes that you build, right? So the same ingredient can be used by many recipes, right? So you see the relationship that's forming? You can have one recipe that can have many ingredients. You can have one ingredient used by many recipes. So you have a many-to-many relationship. Let's take a look at this in more detail. Here you go. This is our recipes table. We have recipes, we have the descriptions, and we have the chef ID associated with the recipe. And this is what I'm envisioning an ingredients table to be like. You're going to have ID, which Rails is going to provide, and you have name. So let's say chicken, beans, carrots, coffee beans, onion, olive oil, milk, whatever, right? Ingredients, many ingredients. So let's say chicken saute. It'll use chicken, it'll use onion maybe, olive oil, etc. And let's look at onion. Onion can be used by chicken saute. Onions can also be used by baked beans, vegetables, or many more other recipes. Now, how do you build this relationship efficiently without having, let's say, a list of different, you specify, let's say, 20 ingredients per recipe or 30 ingredients per recipe. So you have 30 extra columns, and then you have ingredient 1, 2, 3, and fill in the names or something like that. And then do the same with ingredients, like all the recipes listed which have that ingredient. Now, that is not very efficient, right? So what you do is you use a third table. And the third table simply lists the recipe ID and the ingredient ID. So if you take a look right here, you have recipes table, has ID 1, chicken saute. That's listed here. And then in the ingredient ID for the same row, you have 1 as well. That means it goes to the ingredient table. 1 is chicken. So there is an association built between chicken and chicken saute through this table, okay? Through recipe ingredients table. Then let's look at the second row. Chicken saute again, recipe ID 1, so chicken saute. Ingredient ID 5, so it goes to the ingredients table, 5, onion. Okay, so now there's a relationship via this second row of chicken saute and onion. Let's look at the third one. 3, okay, same recipe ID, ingredient ID 6, olive oil. So there you go. You have one recipe associated with 3 different ingredients, and it's stored, and you're able to reference this by using this recipe ingredients table. Similarly, you have ingredient ID 6, which is olive oil, as we just discussed with the recipe ID 1, chicken sauté. Then you see ingredient ID again shows up here in row 5, ingredient ID 6, olive oil, and then it's associated with recipe ID 3. So vegetables, okay? So in Rails, you build this relationship by using the has many through association. And the table name, you can just combine these 2 table names and then call it recipe underscore ingredients, okay? Because it has to be plural, so you just pluralize the second one. That would be the naming convention. You could call this ingredient underscore recipes as well if you wanted. It's really up to you. Now, where that would matter is how you named the model, okay? So, as you know, recipe ingredients will have a recipe ingredient model, and we'll build that, which is Rails convention, and that is the association that we're going to build, the many-to-many association. And we'll explore how to build that very soon. Now, in Rails, the advantage is once you do this, even though these 2 tables are not directly connected, you can do something like this. Let's say you grab a recipe variable, chicken sauté, right? So recipe equals recipe.find1 or something like that. So you have chicken sauté. You can do recipe dot ingredients, and it will list out, based on this relationship, all of the ingredients associated with that recipe. Similarly, you could do ingredient, grab the first ingredient, and then type in ingredient.recipes, and it'll give you all the recipes associated with that ingredient. Okay? So Rails makes it very easy to do this as long as you have the correct setup in your model. The second thing we're going to do in this section is we're going to work on a comments feature. Okay? So let's take a look at that real quick. Here's the thinking behind the comments. You will allow your users, who are chefs, to write comments on recipes. So each recipe will have multiple comments, or have the possibility of multiple comments. So multiple users can go in and then comment on a recipe, if they like it, if they dislike it, what they would change, whatever it may be. So you have a one-to-many association between recipes and comments. So comments, you're going to have description of the comment, so whatever it is. And then you have the many side of the one-to-many association with recipes. So you'll have a recipe ID, which will be the foreign key, right? So you can have a comment, and then as long as the recipe ID is there, you can always associate that comment with that recipe. So great recipe, and this is recipe ID 3 right here. So vegetables has a comment that has the description of great recipe. Great. Now, this also has one other ownership aspect to it. The comment writer. So a chef, only logged in users will be able to write comments. So registered chefs should have some kind of ownership with the comments. So comments will belong to chefs as well. So now you have a one-to-many association with chefs and comments as well. So comments are the many side to the chef's one side and the recipes one side. And you already know, because we already built the one-to-many association between chefs and recipes. So here's an example of one resource, comments, that has multiple one-to-many associations, okay? And this, of course, will allow us to do things like chef.comments or recipe.comments, comment.chef or comment.recipe. It'll give us all of these features. All right, so back to our application. So the next step is going to be, we will start building the back end of this, okay? So the tables, the model name, the many-to-many association, work on the Rails console and see how we can use that association. We will start doing that for both of these resources, so comments and ingredients, and we'll start this in the next video. All right, I'll see you there. Hello and welcome back. In this video, let's get started building ingredients resource. So we know ingredients will have this one attribute, which is name, and it'll have many association with recipes. So let's go ahead and add a migration to create our ingredients table. Rails generate migration, create ingredients. Okay, so the migration file got created right here. If I go to create ingredients, we know it's going to be t.string and it's going to be name, the attribute. So let's run rails db migrate to create this table. Okay, so the table's created. Now we need to create the model. So scroll up to your models right here, app models, new file, and ingredient singular .rb, and within it you have to say class ingredient subclass, whoops, spelling error, subclass from application record. Okay, and we should put a few validations here. We know that this is going to have name, so we should definitely validate for that. So you can't have empty ingredients created. Validates name, presence, true, and length. Let's put a length restriction. We'll say minimum 3, maximum 25. So the names don't get too big. And the other restriction I want is that the name should be unique. So validates uniqueness of name. And if you remember, for recipes and chefs, we built these validations by using TDD, and we were building model tests. So feel free to go ahead and build the model tests associated with this. Okay. All right. So now that my model's built, let's hop on Rails console and test it out. Okay, and I'll maximize this. Control L to go to the top. Okay. Ingredient.all. Okay, so it's hooked up, working correctly. Let's create an ingredient. Ingredient equals ingredient.create. And name, I'll give it chicken. Okay, we have a problem. The problem is undefined method names. What did I do? All right, I must have made a mistake somewhere. I don't know where, so I'll minimize this. Let's go to migration file, attribute correctly, name. Then an ingredient validates, whoops, this is validates name. Okay, validates name, not names. All right, so let's try it again. Over here, I'm going to reload. Bang. Control L. Okay. Ingredient equals ingredient dot create. Within parentheses, name, I'll say chicken. Okay, so I have an ingredient. Ingredient.all. Perfect. Let's create another ingredient. Ingredient2 equals ingredient.create, and then I'll say name, and I'll make this carrots. Okay, so it's hooked up and it's working correctly. So I'm going to minimize this. So now it's time to add the association between ingredient and recipe, between these two models. But for that, we need another table. I'm going to exit out of the console. And what is the table that we're going to need? Remember, recipe ingredients, okay, plural. So Rails, generate migration, create recipe ingredients. Okay, so let's take a look at our migration file. There is recipe ingredients, all right, and this one will just have the two foreign keys. So t dot integer recipe ID and t dot integer ingredient ID. Okay, so let's run the migration. Rails db migrate. So now let's test the connection. So we need the model. Under models, right click, new file, recipe underscore ingredient singular dot rb. Class recipe ingredient subclass application record. Okay, so now that we have the model, maximize that. Let's see, Rails console. Okay, recipe ingredient dot all. Okay, great. Table's hooked up. So now let's build the has many through association. So I'm going to remove these two. I have my ingredient model. I have my recipe ingredient model. The third one I need is my recipe model. Okay. First thing is in recipe ingredient belongs to, this is going to belong to ingredient. Okay. This will also belongs to recipe. All right. And then in your ingredient has many recipe, whoops, forgot the colon, recipe ingredients. Save that. In recipe has many recipe ingredients. Okay. So now we have recipe ingredients here. We have this belongs to association and the has many association is done. Now we need the connection between ingredient and recipe, right? And you do that. So let's start with recipe. Now that you have has many recipe ingredients, all you need is has many ingredients, comma, space, through, colon, space, colon, recipe ingredients. Okay. So has many ingredients through recipe ingredients. Let's do the same for ingredient right here. Has many recipes, comma, space, through, colon, space, colon, recipe ingredients. Save that. I'm going to reload this, reload bang. Okay. Now let's look at what that allows us to do. So let's grab my first ingredient. Ingredient equals ingredient dot first. Okay, it's chicken. Let's grab a recipe. Recipe dot all. Let's grab the first recipe. It has chef ID and everything. So recipe equals recipe dot first. Okay. So I want to add an association with this recipe and this ingredient. How do I do that? I can do this. Recipe dot ingredients and then shovel in the ingredient. Okay? And look at what this did. It ran this complicated query, okay? But the end result of which is I should have a row in my recipe ingredients table. Now if I type in recipe ingredients dot all, whoops, I typed in plural, recipe ingredient dot all. Okay, see now I have a row. Okay, the first row, recipe ID 11, ingredient ID 1. So the association is formed. And how do I know that? If I type in recipe, okay, there's my recipe. If I type in recipe.ingredients, check it out. It gives me the ingredient associated with that recipe. Now if I type in ingredient.recipe, actually ingredient.recipes, there you go. It gives me the recipe associated with that ingredient. I'm going to type Control L to get on top. Now let's add another ingredient to this recipe. Ingredient 2 equals ingredient dot last. Okay, I still have my recipe, right? Now if I type in recipe.ingredients and shovel in ingredient2. Now if I type in recipe.ingredients, check it out. I have 2 ingredients associated with my recipe. Great. Now let's do the same in reverse for ingredient. So I have ingredient 1, that's chicken. Now if I do ingredient, there you go, ingredient dot recipes, and I shovel in the last recipe, recipe.last. Okay, now check it out. If I do ingredient.recipes, I have 2 recipes associated with this ingredient. So my many-to-many association is working in the back end. Great. I'm going to exit out of the console and then minimize this. Okay, so let's go ahead and make a commit of this. All right, git add -a, git commit -m, add ingredient model, and many-to-many association with recipes. Okay, and then git push to push our code to our GitHub repository.